Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's training webinar for the Governor Service Awards. We're so happy you all are here. We're going to get started in just about 1 minute, but in the meantime, we have a chat box question. We'd love for you to introduce yourself. You're going to share what organization are you with, and we're looking forward to spring today. So we're going to share what sign of spring are you most excited to see, smell, or hear first. So go ahead and take a moment to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started. All right, if you just joined, we're introducing ourselves in the chat box and we're sharing one sight, smell, or sound that you're excited for spring, because spring is in the air. So go ahead and take a second to introduce yourself and then we'll get started. Let's see, good to see you, Sharon. And we also have Brian from the Red Cross. So it's awesome to have two Red Cross representatives. And then welcome, Laura from the Rotary Club of Fairmont. Good to have you. Let's see, let's do a shout out to Chris. He's an AmeriCorps member. Thank you for your service, Chris, with the Old Hemlock Foundation. I've always wanted to visit your site. I've heard presentations, but I've never been there. And Chris is looking forward to seeing the forsythia bushes, which I agree. I saw one bloom earlier on our street before it snowed, and now it's back where it started. So I always like seeing those too. They remind me of spring. And then lastly, Brian is looking forward to Cadbury eggs. And I agree too. I love all Easter candy. So go ahead and introduce yourself if you haven't gotten a chance, and I'll get started. My name's Dana Bryant. I'm with Volunteer West Virginia, and I'll be leading today's training webinar. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, or we'll have a spot at the end for you to ask your questions. Today's training webinar will be recorded, and I'll be sending it out after our time together today. So you can look forward to that, and I'll be sending out the training slides as well. So no need to take notes. I'll be sending out everything once we're done, so you can have this information to write a fabulous Governor Service Award nomination for this year. So today we're going to be talking about the Governor Service Awards, and the goal of this webinar is to explain how to write a fabulous nomination that'll stand out to the judges. So we're going to be talking about that today. We're going to start with a little bit about why volunteer recognition is important. I know some of you might be volunteer managers on the call, so this is really interesting. It just helps to explain why it's so important to recognize your volunteers, and that's what the goal of the Governor Service Awards is all about. We like to say it's West Virginia's most prestigious volunteer recognition. And after that, I'm going to introduce the 2026 Governor Service Awards and when it's going to be held, what it looks like, so you have that picture painted clearly in your mind. And then we're going to get into the really fun part that you all are probably here for. We're going to be talking about nomination form tips. So how to write a nomination form that really stands out. And then we'll have a spot for questions at the end. But if anything comes up while I'm speaking, you can put it in the chat box and I'll answer it as I go along. So why is volunteer recognition important? We like to say that the Governor Service Awards is a great way to recognize and thank volunteers. It's your opportunity each year to look back at your team of volunteers and maybe pick out one or two or up to three that really stand out that you want to recognize for the year. It lets volunteers know that their contributions go noticed by leadership and what they do is really special. And you have the opportunity to submit up to 3 nominations each year for the Governor Service Awards. So now let's paint a picture of what the event's going to look like. We're really excited to plan it for this year. It's going to take place on Thursday, August 6th, and it's at the Cultural Center here in Charleston in the Great Hall. It's a beautiful setting. Each year we have about 80 to 100 people attend the events. So if your nominee is selected as a recipient, they're invited to come, and then they can invite members of their family or friends to join as well. And oftentimes they bring the nominator, so you would be able to come as well if they were interested in that. The event is hosted annually by Volunteer West Virginia. We've been doing this for many years with many governors to recognize volunteers in the state. So this year we have 6 different categories that you can nominate a volunteer for, and I'll explain each category to help you. So we have our youth category. That would be any volunteer in your organization or that you know in your community, or maybe that's a friend or family member that is 6 to 18 years old. And then our second category is young adult. We added this category a few years ago because we wanted to break it out a little bit. And that would be anyone 19 to 25. And then we have adult, which is 26 to 59. And then lastly, we have senior. That's anyone 60 or older. So that's how we organize the different age ranges for the Governor Service Awards based on age. And each one of those 4 categories that I listed, you're going to be highlighting the service of that person from the past year, which is 2025. So you're going to really want to look back at the past year and think of a story or a project that they worked on that had a big impact that you're going to highlight in your nomination form. And then the 2 other categories, we have our lifetime achievement. This one's a little bit different. It's going to be the span of the volunteer's life. So you can speak of their volunteer service over multiple years. So it's not going to be just 2025. You're going to talk about their body of work as a volunteer. And you might wonder if that's going to be their service with you, for example, at the Red Cross. Does it need to be just their service at the Red Cross? For lifetime achievement, it can be anything. So it can be different organizations. Several times we have lifetime achievement recipients that volunteer with several groups in their community. So it can span out from many different examples of volunteerism. And then lastly, we have group. I wanted to talk about this one a little bit. This one has a lot of different categories. So it's going to be any group of volunteers, and we're going to classify a group of volunteers as 2 people or more. And this can be an organization. So I know Rotary, the Rotary Club of Fairmont's on the call. This could be your Rotary Club, or maybe a set of your Rotary Club. Maybe it's a specific board that works on a project. So any organization or group of volunteers would be considered that. It can be a project-based team. So let's say your neighborhood just teamed up to do street litter pickups. It can be an informal group of volunteers like that band together for a specific cause. It can be a family. So we've had families receive this award in the past. We're going to hear a story from a husband and wife that received this award the last time we had it. So that would be under the group category, or maybe a business. So a lot of businesses have volunteer programs that would count as a group as well. So a group is any subset in your community that is more than 2 people that band together for a common cause. So I'm going to share a little bit one of our recipients from the last time we had the event, so you can understand what we look for, and then everyone that's selected to receive this award gets a video made. So let's learn a little bit about Elizabeth Scarlett Smith Pound. She was a youth recipient, and she's from the Eastern Panhandle and Hedgesville.
So I've always been interested in helping people. It's always been a passion of mine. Whenever I was just 8 years old, I created Crafts by Kids for a Cause, and then all the money I raised donate in the name of cancer research. As I got older and got more onto like a social media basis, I started to compare myself with a lot of different body images that I saw online, and it just really decreased my own body image and the way that I thought about myself. There's a lot of ways to help that. Taking care of yourself from the outside in, like painting your nails might make you feel more confident. And so I started to do all those things. I started to take care of myself more. And as I did that, I realized that there's a lot of people in my community that don't even have access to the basic necessities of hygiene products. So Take Care USA is all about helping children who need hygiene products such as shampoo, conditioner, soap, body scrub, anything that you could think of. I donate the necessary hygiene products to those children in need.
Take Care USA is Isabel's nonprofit that helps youth in need. In 2021, she started this as an initiative to help individuals who have a lack of access to hygiene products. There were different programs in the area that were helping kids in other ways, but she wanted to start something that was new and that wasn't already a part of our community. I think she's put her stamp on our community in a variety of ways. She speaks to kids of all ages, from kindergarten to high school. At the really young level, she talks to kids about how they can help in their community or help at home, kind of planting the seed of the idea of community service. And then as she meets with students who are a little bit older, she shares the mission of her nonprofit and gets them involved with how they can help in their own community, how they can start their own nonprofit as well. And then students that are a little bit older, she starts to talk about not only Take Care USA and how that helps others, but how they can take care of themselves. She likes to speak to the middle school students about body positivity.
So there's one specific time where I went to my local Martinsburg Empowerment Center. It's a place where women and children can come there and collect different items that they may need and pick it up for themselves. And as I went in there with about 50 Take Care bags that day, I remember this one lady, she walked in and she asked me what I had in the bags, and I was like, oh, it's just a bunch of self-care products, and she started looking in them, so I gave her one, and I remember her nearly being in tears. She almost started crying, telling me how thankful she was that I came in with those. And so it just really showed me that the thing that I do makes such a difference in other people's lives. You're never too young to get involved, and it can be something big in starting your own nonprofit, or it can be small by picking up trash in your community. If you want to help, you can do anything that you can.
So that's just one example of the many stories we tell the Governor Service Awards. I always love showing a video. I think it makes the whole ceremony come to life. And we'll watch one more video together during today's training for you all to see. So now I'm going to give you a little sneak peek of the award ceremony so you know what it looks like. Here's a picture. It's just a beautiful ceremony. Here's everyone with their family and friends. And during the award ceremony, the recipients walk to the front of the stage, they receive their award, and then their video plays that you just saw. So for an example, Isabel would have walked up and gotten her award. And then if you're curious, these are our most recent class of Governor Service Award video recipients, and then we like to put where everyone's from. So a goal of this award is really to represent volunteers from across the state. So you'll see that we have volunteers from Morgantown, Bluefield, Quinton from Wheeling, the Banner Brothers, they were our group recipients from Buchanan. And then we also have Bob and Sharon Selby. They were also a group. That was a husband and wife team that received the award. And that's who received the award last time we hosted the event. You might notice that not every category is represented here. For example, we didn't have a young adult category this year, but how it works is when you submit a nominee or a nomination, they're all scored by a review panel, and the nominees that score the highest are selected to receive the award. So if a specific category didn't have a score that was high enough, they may or may not receive an award. So that's kind of a little bit about how this works. So now let's hear one more story. I love Bob and Sharon's story. They're from Raynell, and they received the award for cooking meals in their community. And then I'll say no more, so check it out.
Many of our Appalachian neighbors here in Greenbrier County, they don't have basic needs like food, clothing, and they don't even have hope sometimes. And so at Wellspring, we have our day haven where people can come and do laundry for free. They can take showers, get connected to other resources, have a hot meal, courtesy of Bob and Sharon, and to kind of help them weave through the system and overcome the barriers that many marginalized people face.
We do the food program here and a few little other things. You know, he helps with the building maintenance.
The restaurant taught us to feed in volumes and to do it efficiently, to deal with a large number of people at one time. We've drawn on her experience to do that. And then when you get donations here, they're maybe not what you want as far as food prep and food ingredients. So she's very good at taking what we get and making it into something. And that comes from a lot of experience of doing it.
But I like those challenges, you know, just to see, you know, and I don't like to waste food, but it's a challenge to me.
Having a home-cooked meal, something that's warm, that people can come in and get, sometimes makes all the difference. When somebody is just trying to survive to the next moment and they come in and they don't have to worry about where they're going to get their next meal, and that we can provide that is just so important to us. So I think it sparks a lot of hope in people and helps them think, you know, well, maybe I can get through today. It makes it even better if it's home cooked and homemade, which Sharon makes homemade rolls every day. So it's a great thing. This place smells like fresh bread, and people can come in here and just have a safe place to be. And that's what's really important to us.
To me, when you go out and you remove an obstacle from someone's life, to me, that's a success. And if they can continue on even for a day, that's a success. We try to treat them with dignity and respect. And even if it's only for an instant, they'll get that here. And the good thing about it is we love them and they'll get it every day. We look for people to help, but you do it in a way that you let them maintain their dignity and their integrity. That's what this world needs more of. We don't have that. We don't have compassion and love and help for our fellow man. We don't, and we need that. We've lost that, and we need that as a society, as a people.
They put their money where their mouth is. They're so helpful. They don't bluff. They like to get boots on the ground and just do the work to help people. So they're serious about helping others.
So another great story, so many good thoughts in that video, and that's really what this award is all about. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the nomination form eligibility. So the nomination form is completely online for you all. It's going to be a form that you fill out for your volunteer or your volunteer group. The deadline for nominations is April 1st, so you have a bit of time to put them together. And recently we moved to an online nomination form. It used to be a longer form where you would write an essay. You might remember doing that. Now all you have to do is fill in the blanks. So I'm going to show you what the nomination form looks like, and we'll walk through it for you. So on my screen here, you'll see the nomination form, and you can find this through our website. You're going to click online nomination form, and then you'll be taken to the survey form. And as you fill out this form, you're going to pick your award category. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then you're going to be filling out your nominee's name. And the nominee is the person that you're nominating, so your volunteer's name. And then if it's a group, you're going to add the contact, and then you're going to add the age. We just do that to make sure that the categories line up correctly. And then you're going to put your nominee's contact information. And then you're going to reach this section here. Why should this person or group receive a Governor's Service Award? This is like your introductory sentence. We always like to say it's good to add more information than less. So you probably want to add a few sentences here about why this volunteer really stood out for their service in 2025. And then we're going to break down into the different questions. And my biggest tip here is we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but when you reach this section, you're going to want to answer each one of these bullets. So you'll see there's 3 separate bullets here, and you're going to want to answer each of these questions, because these bullets and these questions here are how the rubric for the scoring is created. So each nomination that you send us will be scored by the review panel, and that's how it lines up. So you're going to want to answer each one of these questions thoughtfully and carefully and elaborate on each one of these bullets, which is pretty self-explanatory. So it looks like you're going to be filling out 4 questions here. And you're going to want to write a few paragraphs for each question. And then you're going to come to your reference section. These references will be called only if your nominee is selected to receive the award. We do a reference check to make sure that everything lines up. And the way that works is I would be calling each one of these references to interview them. A lot of the time we just do it to make sure that the volunteers are on the up and up, but then it's also a great opportunity to get different stories about the volunteers and information we haven't heard yet. So that's how the references work. So just know that they'll only be contacted if your nominee has been selected as a recipient. And then lastly, you're going to do your nominator's contact information. So that's going to be you. This is where you put your information. And then if your nominee is selected as a recipient, I'll reach out to you and I'll tell them. So I'll be like, guess what? Sally is receiving a Governor's Service Award. And then how it works in the past is I say, would you like to tell them? And then you're able to call Sally and say, guess what? You're receiving a Governor's Service Award. And then they're all excited, and then they'll receive a letter from us and a letter from the governor's office. So that's a little bit of a sneak peek of how that works. And then we added this button here. It just says, have you viewed the nomination training webinar? That's what you're on today. This has no bearing in scoring. We added this year just to see how many people actually listen to the training. So that's just for our internal information. And then you're going to have up to 5 pages of supporting materials. You're not going to want to skip this. We're going to go into this section a little bit more, but this is where you're going to be able to add new information for your nomination. And you'll be able to attach at least 5 different files. And then lastly, you're going to want to be sure to click this button. This is how you get a copy of your nomination form, so you can keep it on file, and then you know that we've received it. And then when you click done, you'll see a screen pops up that says, we have received your Governor Service Award nomination. So you'll get verification that way too. But if you have a question, you can reach out to me about your nomination form. Or let's say, for example, you submit a nomination form and then you go, oh my gosh, I need to submit that form again. Like there's something wrong with it. Just let me know, you can resubmit it. So that's a little bit about how this works. You see, it's pretty simple and to the point, but the best nominations are the ones people put time and thought into it. So even though this is an easy form, my suggestion would be to begin to record these different answers and put some thought into it before you submit it. Now we're going to go back to our slides. All right, so we've checked out the nomination form. Now we're going to talk a little bit about eligibility. I've talked about this before, but this is something people might get caught up on or a little bit hard to understand. So for Except for Lifetime Achievement, the nominations must include significant activities from the past year. So you're going to want to look back on last year and share a story or a big accomplishment from your volunteers that highlight their service for that year. Posthumous nominations are not eligible. So if someone's passed away, unfortunately, we can't give them an award if they're deceased. Like I said before, awards are not given in all categories. It really depends on the score. More than one award may be made per category. So for our last award ceremony, you might have recognized there were 2 group recipients and there wasn't a young adult recipient. So sometimes we tease it out like that. And that's all based on the review committee. They make these decisions. And then no more than 3 nominations can be submitted by the same person. Some other eligibility rules are individuals and groups that have received an award in the last 10 years are not eligible for consideration. We'll check that as we go along, but if you're curious, you can reach out to me and I'll check our database to see if your nominee has received an award before. Sometimes that happens because people are so fabulous. They get nominated more than once, which is really sweet and genuine, but it has to be a 10-year span for that. And then lastly, employees and commissioners of Volunteer West Virginia are in the governor's office are not eligible to receive an award or submit a nomination. So that's more of an internal policy for us. Now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. I'm going to answer a question before I get into this part. So Tammy asked, how many nominations do you typically receive each year? That's a great question, Tammy. It spans. So I think Moya could correct me if I'm wrong. And the year with the most nominations was over 100. Our goal this year is to receive 75 nominations. So that'll give you an idea of how many we get. Last time, I believe we received a little bit over 60. So that'll give you an idea. You're welcome. So now we're going to talk about how to write a winning nomination. So our first tip that we're going to share, and a lot of stuff is self-explanatory, but if you do these things, you will score higher by the review committee. So you're going to want to answer all the questions, and you're going to want to answer each question in great detail. So we would recommend writing 2 to 3 paragraphs per question. So each question you saw, they might have 2 or 3 bullet points. Maybe each bullet point is a paragraph at least. And we've noticed in the past that well-written nomination forms with supporting materials score higher with the review panel. So you're going to want to add as much information as possible so we can really get a clear picture of your volunteer. Our second pro tip on how to write a winning nomination is to respond to every bullet point within the question. I talked about this a lot, but you'll see an example on the bottom of the screen. This is community need, and you'll see that there's 3 different bullet points. So you're going to want to answer each one of those questions because that's how it's going to be scored in judged. And then a pro tip that we like to share, you can use each of the bullet points as a title or a heading for your response. So for example, you could write, what community need did the nominee address? And then write a paragraph underneath that. People that do that score really high with the nomination committee because it's well organized, and then it paints a really clear picture. So that's a basic thing you can do to really organize your nomination well, would be to make each one of those bullets a header in your response. Paint a clear picture of your nominee. So you need to remember that reviewers have no prior knowledge of your nominee. So the review panel isn't allowed to Google them or look them up. Everything that they're going off of is going to be based out of your nomination form. So it's going to be a completely blank slate. Sometimes we get nominations and we have a hunch for, like, we can tell this fabulous volunteer, they're worthy of the award, but there just isn't enough detail. And what happens sometimes is when you write someone else's story, you know so much about them, you don't really see what you leave out. So you might want to write your nomination form. For example, maybe Rotary Club of Fairmont or Red Cross, you could write your nomination and then have someone outside of the Rotary Club or the Red Cross read it and see if the picture is painted clearly enough, because sometimes you have all that internal knowledge inside of you, but it's hard to get it out because you assume that what you know is what the reviewer knows. So that's a great tip. Just have someone outside of your bubble read your nomination to make sure that it's clear and paints a really good picture of your volunteer. And then our pro tip for this is don't just list what they did. So sometimes we get a big running list of everything they did, which is wonderful, but explain what those activities say about their leadership and dedication. So instead of writing, Sally organized a Red Cross blood drive, maybe elaborate a little bit on that and say, you know, because of that blood drive, our bank went up 50%, which enabled us to help 25 families. I'm just making stuff up, but this gives you a better idea. So always elaborate a little bit more and see if you can find a heartfelt detail that's going to stick with the reviewers and go, wow, like this project was very significant. Another example I'll do before I move on would be, this is a story from the Red Cross. One of their volunteers in the past installed a smoke alarm that saved someone's life. So they installed the smoke alarm and then that person had a fire and it saved their life. So instead of saying, Sally installed 25 smoke alarms, you would say Sally installed 25 smoke alarms. One smoke alarm saved someone's life. And you really tease out that story and tell it. So it really tugs at the review panel's heartstrings. So you're always going to want to elaborate a little bit more and really tell a clear story. I hope these examples help. Our other tip on how to write a winning nomination, do your homework. So these are all going to be collected and scored at the same time. So it's not first come, first serve. You're going to want to take time to collect information about your nominee. We noticed when there were paper forms, people really took their time, like writing it and collecting different information. Now that it's online, you could submit it a little bit faster, but don't let that deter you. Take a week or two to really begin to collect information about your volunteer. Maybe write their nomination, sit with it, and come back to it, because you're going to want to collect stories and data to paint a clear picture about your nominee's impact in the community. So you're going to want to take a little bit of time with this. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the supporting materials. You might remember from the nomination form that you can submit up to 5 pages of supporting materials. And what these are doing is adding more information for your nomination. So you're going to want to make sure this isn't redundant. You might answer those questions with the bullets, but you want to add new information with these supporting materials. So some examples that have really worked well in the past might be an impact story about your volunteer, a project that they worked on and how it impacted someone. You heard that in Isabel's video, how she talked about giving someone a hygiene item and then it almost brought tears to their eyes, something like that. Testimonials from fellow volunteers, staff, or direct beneficiaries of the nominee's work. So what that means is if your volunteer was serving meals in a food pantry, maybe you would have someone share a story that's received a meal from that person. So we can really understand what their service is doing and how it's helping West Virginians. You can include newspaper articles, so this is always good. Maybe one newspaper article that talks a little bit about your volunteer. A letter describing the impact of the volunteers is really helpful. Have someone in your community outline their service and what impact it's making. And then photos are helpful as well. Sometimes with photos, you could submit one picture, but my advice for photos would be to make a collage. So not all 5 of your attachments are pictures, if you know what I mean. So you can do 1 page of photos or as many as you want, but I would say the 4 remaining attachments for something else and not do 5 photos. So here's an example of someone that was being nominated that mentors students in a school. And let's call them Mary. So this is a nomination for Mary, and she's a mentor in an after-school program. And so what was in Mary's nomination is a letter from a student talking about how the mentorship helped them. A statement from a fellow volunteer. These can be powerful. It's kind of a peer-led statement. An impact story about the program from the high school principal. A photo collage, like I said, just use 1 page with a bunch of pictures so you don't waste your other attachments. And then a newspaper article about the launch of the program that Mary's in. So that just kind of teases it out a little bit so you can understand a concrete example and what kind of attachments you might do. And then our pro tip for this slide is testimonials and letter of support should be different context than the references. So what that means, it's helpful to have your 3 references be different than the people that are writing letters for you and statements. That way we get a wide variety of information, and when we speak to the references, I'll get different stories to share and just different information about your volunteer. So you're going to want to make those separate. 6 is save your work. We strongly recommend that when you prepare your answers, you're going to want to put them in a Word document so you can save them and maybe work on it over the span of a week or 2. That way you don't lose it, because if you put it in that survey form that I showed you, it's not going to stay. When you refresh your page, it'll get erased. So we recommend that you prepare your answers, put them in a Word document, because heaven forbid you submit it and it disappears or it doesn't go through. That way you have everything recorded and you can resubmit it if need be. I talked about this a little bit when we looked through the form online, but once you click submit, you'll receive a confirmation message that we received your nomination, and you're always welcome to write me if you want to double check. And then if you want a copy of your nomination, you're going to want to click send me a copy of my response via email, and it'll get sent to you. It's going to be sent from SurveyMonkey, so it might go into your spam folder. So if you see a message from SurveyMonkey, you'll know that's your Governor's Service Award nomination. Other information I wanted to share with you, we will post a list of the recipients. So everyone that's receiving the award and everyone that's been nominated on our website by May 14th. So you'll be able to go on there and check and see if your person has been selected or who else was nominated for each category. And then all nominations are due by April 1st. So you have a little bit over a month to work on them. So now we're at the end. So I'd love to hear if you have any questions. It's a small group, so you can unmute yourself, or if you like, you can put your question in the chat box and I'll read it out loud. So I'll give you all just a second. You're welcome. Thank you, Brian. No questions from Brian, but he says thank you for reviewing all this information. I love it when we don't get questions. It makes me feel like we did a good job. So thank you for all your sweet messages in the chat box. Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time to nominate a volunteer. We really appreciate it. We can't wait to share their stories. Let's see. We have a question from Tammy. Tammy asked for a nominee who has done significant volunteer work in the last year, but also a lifetime of similar years. Would the lifetime be more applicable? Tammy, I would say yes. If you have information about that person's entire life of volunteerism, you could definitely nominate them for a Lifetime Achievement Award, because then you're going to get to recognize everything they've done in their whole life. not just the past year. So that would be my recommendation to you. If you already have that information at your fingertips, would be to nominate someone for a Lifetime Achievement Award. Good question. Thanks, Tammy. Of course. All right. Well, will you think of any other questions? I'm going to put my email address in the chat box. And if you have any questions, writing your nomination, just let me know. Or if you need to check that we received it, you can write me too. And thanks, Valerie. It's good to see you.
Dana, with that question that was asked, if the lifetime and the in another category, could that person be nominated in two different categories, the lifetime and another one?
I would just nominate them for one. You can't really nominate one person for two categories. So if you have someone and you know their body of work for their whole life, I would just nominate them in Lifetime Achievement. Does that
Dana, this is Moya. I'm just going to say one thing, that, very occasionally we get a nomination that they've nominated someone in a category and we feel that they would have a much better chance in a different category. We can propose that to the reviewers so that if you nominate somebody as a senior, but it feels stronger in Lifetime, we will make that suggestion.
That's a great point. Thanks, Moya. So we have slid people into different categories that the review committee is like, wow, this senior should really be in Lifetime Achievement. And if you don't know how to nominate your volunteer, you can email me and I can help you figure that out too. All right, any other questions? Well, thank you all so much. We can't wait to read your stories. We appreciate all the time and kindness that you're going to put into your nomination form, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye, everyone. See you soon.